Welcome to Soul Elevation, guiding your ascension to new heights. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin, and I want to talk today about your energetic impact and how you're connected to everything, everybody. And I was actually a guest on the Great Remembrance Summit over the weekend that was hosted by Portal to Ascension. That was a great event. And I had created a couple of visuals to help support my segment. And unfortunately, I couldn't get the screen sharing to work. So I had shared some things that I had experienced in a metaphysical space in kind of what we might think of as the quantum realm, this sort of, beyond time and space. And I was describing a couple of experiences in particular that I've had in that space that relate to our energetic connection, our energetic impact, and how our vibrational frequency affects the external world. And because I couldn't get the screen sharing to work, but I had created these visuals to share, I thought, well, let's talk about them in a YouTube because I think that, there should be a saying about how a picture represents 1,000 words. It's like I can describe and describe and describe. And just by looking at a visual, it can help you get there faster. So, in that spirit, let me go ahead and share my screen and I'll show you the first image. And hopefully, the sharing will work on YouTube. And I can see when I go into see what's streaming on YouTube, I can make sure that it's showing, but I'm zooming into YouTube, so I have to wait just a second because there's a little bit of a delay. Okay, I can see it now. So what you see here are two people. Oh, also, if you're just listening to the audio, I will put the two visuals in the show notes. And like I've said in previous live streams, it depends how you listen to your audio, whether you're going to be able to see whether those will come through in the show notes, because there are lots of ways to listen to the audio of a YouTube or of a podcast. And I just kind of put it in one place and it shoots it out to all of the different platforms. And so I don't really have control over how you listen to it and what limitations they might have. So you may want to just go to soulelevationpodcast.com and watch the video because the video will have the images. And so with this image, what you're seeing are two people who have this sort of grid like appearance to them. So this represents the etheric body. And I'm going to share with you an experience that I saw in again, we'll just call it the quantum realm. You may have heard me tell this story before because I know I have shared it before, but it was very powerful. This was in the state between being awake and being asleep, called the hypnagogic state. And this is a state where we can be very open and where we may have psychic experiences because our energy, the barriers are lower. The veil can be thinner in that state. And so what I experienced was myself as it seemed like I was tiles. There were all these colored tiles, multicolored tiles, and that it was like I was looking from the inside out. So it was almost like I was in this tunnel of tiles, but I was also that tunnel, but I was seeing myself from the inside. And so these tiles had all of these colors, and I could see that I shared tiles with the people that I'm connected with. So if I have a strong connection with someone, so let's say I see them a lot, we influence each other a lot, or we have a lot of overlap in our life, then we share a lot of tiles. We may just have a multitude of tiles that when something, let's just use color for an example. Like if those tiles are one color for me, they're likely to also be the same color for that person because it's almost like a Venn diagram. It's like where we overlap. And I could see that as I raise my vibration, so if I am feeling joyful, if I am in a blissful state, all of the different ways that we can raise our vibration, then my tiles change color. And I could see that in this experience, my vibration was raising and raising and raising, getting faster and faster and faster. And suddenly the whole thing, all of my tiles turned gold. And it was cool. It was kind of this like ripple effect. Like it just sort of, it didn't kind of happen all at once. It was sort of like this, they kind of turned gold from one part out, they kind of radiated out and all of them turned gold. But then you've got these places, like basically all of my tiles connect to everybody that I'm connected with. So their tiles were then the tiles that we share, it was automatically turning their tiles gold, which to me represented like a higher frequency. So the tiles that we share, even though in that experience I was not directly connecting with them at that time, it was in the quantum, beyond time and space, because of the connection that we have, it was turning those tiles gold, which was then starting to help the rest of their tiles to change color, also meaning to vibrate higher. So this is a great representation of how the work that we do on ourselves helps to affect the collective. It ripples out. And I know that you have heard this, how what you do for yourself ripples out to everybody else, to the collective. There were also representations here of like people that I'm not so connected with, but we have some connection. We may just have a slight connection, but even them, they may just have one strip of tiles where we're connected, but that strip of tiles was influenced by the gold, the my tiles turning gold, which was then helping the rest of their tiles to start to have that gold to it as well. So what we see in this was the best that I could get. It's not really what I saw, but it's a good representation where you have one being here on the right side and they have turned gold and they're interacting through the heart space with a being that's blue. And you can see that the gold is starting to kind of a little bit, it's starting to make some of their blue golden, more golden. So that is somewhat of a representation there of what I experienced. So if we move on to the second one, because, oh, it did, okay. So this is the second one, and I know I write about this one in my book, Your Authentic Awakening. I can't remember if I wrote about the golden tiles. I think I did. But this one was a different experience where I was in a void. Again, this was the hypnagogic state. I was not dreaming, but it was that fertile time between wakefulness and sleep. And I was like, I was in space. It really felt like I was in space. And then as I was in this voidy space, floating experience, I started noticing these thin silver lines. I was starting to be able to see these thin golden lines, thin silver lines. And as they started to take shape, and it wasn't really like they were taking shape, it was like they were coming into focus for me. So it seems like they were always there, but I was starting to adapt to be able to see them. They were these huge gears. So you can see these gears behind the head here. And these gears were rotating and they were moving, just like we have gears in our physical experience and how gears work. And as one turns, it turns another. And so I was seeing this. So it was as though I was in space, kind of floating, but I didn't really have a body. But I'm seeing these thin silver gears, and they were kind of upright. And then eventually I began to see this spinning galaxy type of image. And this is something that I have seen since the early days of my meditation practice. That was one of the first visual inner eye experiences that I had, was seeing, it was like seeing from a distance this rotating spiral. And it reminded me of a spiral galaxy that was rotating. And that was really confusing for me back then because I didn't feel a connection with space. I had no idea what a starseed was. I had maybe had some curiosity about UFOs and aliens as a child, but never felt that I was connected with ETs and don't have any memories of seeing ETs or UFOs. And wasn't really interested in space programs or anything like that, and didn't watch sci-fi and all of these things. So I'm like, why am I seeing this spinning galaxy? Well, fast forward almost 10 years now, and I do feel a star seed aspect to myself. I do feel a connection with extraterrestrial intelligence, and that is much more interesting to me now. I am interested in sci-fi in a much deeper way than I was ever back then. So anyway, this was a familiar sighting for me because it's not unusual for me to see this spinning galaxy representation in my inner eye, my third eye. But I'm seeing the gears and they're kind of upright, and I'm seeing this spinning galaxy, and it has more of a flat, like horizontal orientation. And then I start to see how they are related. And it came up as though it was like a grid. And the gears were the y-axis, and the galaxy was the x-axis. The gears represented time. The galaxy represented space. So we've got space as the x-axis and time as the y-axis. And then I could see that my human experience, my human being, is always moving in this grid, this time and space grid. And wherever I am in time and space, I am somewhere plotted in, there's some coordinate of space time, and there is this like graphic component to it. But then I could see that there was also a Z axis or a Z plane. And, when we think about that in everyday mathematics, that's like when you start to add depth. You may have height, width, and then you've got depth. Like it just enters this other dimension. And that was my living reality. And I could see that I created the Z plane through my eyes. My eyes in this vision were actually projecting reality, and that was the Z plane. So reality was being projected through my eyes. So it wasn't that my eyes were receiving what the creation was. My eyes were actually projecting, and the projection, so if you think of the projection as your creation, your reality creation, or the projection, there was this aspect of bending light. And we know biologically, with how the lens of the eye works, that there is this refraction, this bending of light that's part of how we see. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I'm familiar enough with it. But it was like the eyes, and of course our brain behind the eyes, but it is bending the light to create our reality. And that like the rate that it, not the rate, but the angle, that's the word, the angle that the light is bent is related directly to our vibrational frequency. So there's math behind this that I didn't get access to, and I probably wouldn't have understood or been able to retain if I had actually seen equations and things like that. But it was that as we move through life, we're always on this X and Y axis. We're always kind of plotted along this space-time matrix grid. But the reality that we experience is vibrationally created, but the vibration that we're holding and emanating bends the light in a way that our creation is reflecting that vibration. And so we already know that our vibrational frequency, or you may already be aware, your vibrational frequency is dictating your reality. And we can think about this philosophically in terms of if you're in an elevated mood, you're going to be noticing things that are going to be making you feel more joyful. Because, and you know this, if you've ever been in love, the grass is greener, the birds are suddenly, feel like they're singing to you. We know that when we're in a good mood, everything just seems more elevated. And when we're in a really bad mood, or we're, feel like we're walking through mud, or we feel like we've gotten dumped on a lot of things, then we just start noticing and almost looking for things that match that state, almost trying to prove to ourselves that, things are bad. And so there is this element that I was seeing in this experience of the bending of light in relation to the vibration that we're in. And something that I talked about yesterday in this summit is using gratitude as an example of how we can influence our vibrational frequency, because gratitude is such a high vibration. And so if if we habitually get ourselves into a state of gratitude, then we train ourselves to engage with the world in a thankful way. And as such, we are looking for things for which to be grateful, and the world presents to us more things to be grateful for, because that's what we're calling in. We're inviting in gratitude. And so we're noticing what we want to be grateful for. And it can take some training to be able to do this, but gratitude is a very high vibrational aspect of ourselves. It's a very high vibrational state to be in. So if you can train yourself to be in gratitude more frequently, then that is going to raise your vibration. The cumulative effect of that will raise your vibration. So I talk about this in my book, Your Authentic Awakening. I also go into this a lot in a slightly different way, but in a workshop that I hosted in May called the Energy Reset Workshop. So that has a lot of practical energy activities that you can engage with. So it's still available as a replay. It's very affordable. I think it was like $37. So if this is speaking to you and you want to dive into it more and you want to continue to engage with it from an energetic standpoint, there are other examples that I give from my own metaphysical experiences in that workshop that you might really enjoy. So I would love to see you at the Galactic Summit. This is coming up really quickly now. It's going to be August 2nd, which is in less than 2 weeks. I have amazing presenters. So Neil Gower from Portal to Ascension, Tony Ghazi, who is a channel for the Praying Mantis Collective from the Antares Stargate. He's just remarkable. Debbie Solaris, who does Galactic Akashic readings, and she's just an amazing soul, and a friend of mine who I just love dearly, Viviane Chauvet. Viviane, I'm so excited. She has a documentary coming out, and I get to interview her for the third time today, later today. That'll won't be out today, but I'm just excited. She's another just really, really beautiful soul. She's going to be a part of this summit. We have Ulrika Sullivan, who is a wonderful astrologer, and she has an amazing podcast. Um, Daniel Scranton, he's channeling the Arcturians who give ninth dimensional guidance. All of these guests, there are other guests, Isha Patel and Johnny Galactic, John Napolitano, um, Kimberly Meredith, who is just remarkable. She's going to do a multidimensional healing for the group. So it's going to be very, very activating, very, if you're a starseed, you're going to get a lot out of this. If you're interested in the galactic kind of convergence of spirituality, don't miss your chance to join. I'll put a link in the notes. And I would highly recommend becoming a VIP as well, because all of these speakers have some amazing gifts for VIPs. It's only $55. So if you're in a position to be able to invest in that, it's not much. I try to keep things very accessible, and you're going to get a ton of value, because you're going to get you have a chance to win a free praying mantis crystal skull, for one thing, from Tony. You've got a couple of events coming up that are both, I think they're both in the $55 range. You get those for free. So that right there just gives you more than the $55 for the value of your VIP. There are courses and lessons and e-booklets and all kinds of great things. So definitely consider being a VIP. But regardless, you can join us for free. Register on karagoodwin.com. And thank you so much for being here. I'm wishing you a beautiful week ahead. Many, many blessings.